In this video, I'm going to take you through a topical how-to podcast guide from start to finish. I'm podcast award winner Hank Davis. I've been podcasting since 2006. I've partnered with many major podcasting brands, and I've even had my brain picked by a prestigious university. In order to start a podcast, you have to have your own concept or idea, and then a unique hook for your idea. When you're thinking about creating your concept for your podcast, you have to create an avatar of your intended listening audience. And no, your audience is not everyone. You should have the exact person and details in mind of the perfect person to listen to your show. By doing that, you won't waste a lot of time and money and effort on trying to target people who have no interest in your show. Let's quickly talk about the hook. What's your unique selling point? We've all heard the expression, there's nothing new under the sun. That's true in podcasting too. So how will you position yourself in a sea of sameness? Why would someone choose to listen to you over all the other options they have available? Here are a couple basic ideas of the concept of a hook, of a unique selling point. This is the insert city name right here. Community news podcast that only focuses on positive news stories. Or we review Netflix TV shows in under 20 minutes. So you have the overarching idea of what your show is about, and then you have your unique selling point or your hook that may get someone to listen to it. It's also a great idea to research others in your market and find out exactly what they're doing, so maybe you can offer something that they're not. Now that we talked about the overarching idea or concept and hook, now let's talk about branding. The first tier to that is going to be your show's name, and I always suggest acquiring the show's domain name with one caveat, and we'll get to that in just a second. First, the show's name needs to be clear and obvious what the show is about. So if you're not a coffee company, probably shouldn't call your show Morning Coffee and then talk about gardening. Also, steer clear of trademarks, copyrights, etc. You do not want to try to incorporate a copyright or trademark into your branding or your show's name. Also, the title needs to be spelled in a way that people will look for it. Is it for, or for? And like I said earlier, as long as you're not infringing on somebody's IP, lock down the domain name of your show. Let's say down the road, somebody creates a show with the exact same title. You can prove that you bought that domain name on a certain date and you started your show on a certain date, which will look good for you if you have to get into a legal dust up. There's also another nice benefit to owning domain names, because sometimes if somebody wants to acquire that name from you, they'll be willing to shell out a little bit of money. I have sold a domain name in the past to a podcast I was thinking about doing, but never did. Let's move on to artwork. Your artwork needs to be specific to your show and also, again, clear and obvious. It needs to describe exactly what someone could expect if they click on it, and make sure that it stands out among a sea of hundreds of other podcasts. You can use services like Canva. You could hire someone off of Upwork or Fiverr. Be careful though on those services. But if you use those services, make sure you look for people who are highly rated only. And you could also find a freelancer out there that's not on either of those sites, but just somebody that may be recommended by somebody else you know. When that artwork's created, at least at the time of this recording, the image must be square, ranging from 1400 by 1400 to 3000 by 3000 pixels. The file type should be either JPEG or PNG with a size less than 500 kilobytes. Other specs are linked in the description of this video, so click on that to make sure you have that all figured out. And if you choose to build a website, I always recommend doing the artwork first, because it could give you an idea of what the color scheme of your website is going to be. And let's dive into website and media hosting. While websites give you a centralized location to send all your listeners for more information or in case something happens. However, building a website can be daunting, expensive, time consuming to keep the updates and all of that stuff. and just a major overall hassle. Unless you use a service like Podpage, affiliate link in the description. Check out Podpage. They make it dead simple to build a website for your podcast. But you're still going to need media hosting on top of a website or Podpage. And media hosting is simply just housing the MP3 file so it is served to all your subscribers. While there are free options out there, I always steer people clear of free options. You just don't know if or when a free service is going to shutter their doors. So I try to detour people from going to free services. You want a company that has a business plan, that is actually in business and making money and profitable. The media hosting service I use is linked in the description. And the reason I have chosen them is because they give you a bucket to create multiple shows. And then you have a limit of how many downloads per month you can achieve. And it's a huge limit, even on the basic plan. So most podcasters will never exceed that in any given month, even with multiple shows. Whereas there are a lot of other good media hosts out there, but they're going to only allow you to create one single show. And if you get burnt out on that or you want to do something different, now you got to start up a whole nother plan, plus keep paying that plan so you can serve those downloads to your current subscribers. So it can just be a pain in the butt if you want to create more than one show. In the past, I would have said for certain you need to have a website. Nowadays, I am not so keen on that just because of all the extra cost, time, effort, and energy you're going to put into that website. So if you're just starting out, a media host will give you a generic page that you can kind of modify. It's just kind of a basic show page. Some media hosts allow you to use that in conjunction with domain forwarding. So if you own a domain name, you can kind of train your audience to go to that domain name and have it forward to your generic but functional media hosting page that they give you. Next up, we're going to talk about feedback. When it comes to feedback, you can keep it simple. A generic email address and a generic voicemail number. You can get both for free if you use Google. You can get a Google voicemail number and you just have to use it every so often or they'll try to take it away from you. And then the email, self-explanatory. If you could do the show name or a truncated version of the show name at gmail.com or whatever email provider you choose to use. Now you have written and verbal communication with your audience. Now it's time to focus in on gathering the audio elements. Are you going to have a voiceover artist? Are you going to have intro music? Are you going to have sound effects? You got to keep all this stuff in mind and start getting that together early. The key here is if you use music, make sure it's royalty-free music that you're going to license and have the rights to use. It is simply disrespectful and illegal to use music that you don't own the copyright to or you're not licensing. It can also be extremely costly to do that as well. Some of these services have little bots that go around the internet, and if they find a song that they own, they're going to tag you, and they can even pull down your entire podcast. While voiceovers can add a professional flair to your show, make sure they're not overly long. People don't want to sit through repeat voiceovers week after week after week, so keep it short. And sound effects, which I love to use on my podcast, can add a great element and a humorous element to the show, or it can annoy people who aren't so keen on the inside jokes and such. So keep that in mind. It's time to talk equipment. I've put together 3 tiers just to keep things simple. All the links are in the description of this video. On the low tier, we have just a USB or XLR combo microphone called the Audio-Technica ATR 2100X. I've got this microphone for $29.99. However, it's usually around $50. You would simply plug in the USB-C cable to the back of that microphone and then plug the other end into your computer, whether your computer is USB-A or USB-C. Audio-Technica provides both cables in the box. On the medium tier, you're going to pair this microphone, which is called the Zoom ZDM1, and it is an XLR only microphone. And at this tier, the audio interfaces that I recommend are mostly dual purpose handy recorders, links in the description. But if you're dead set on sticking with a USB microphone, you can still use something like that ATR 2100X and then pair it with a small format audio interface that is for USB microphones like the PodTrack P2. While on the low tier, you're going to be recording into computer software on your computer, laptop, tablet, etc. On the medium tier, all of those devices that I have linked in the description have onboard recording, so you record right to the device. Let's say the power goes out or something happens, somebody trips over a cable, etc. With those SD card recording devices, you're going to have a much better chance of recovering the file than if something happens with your computer, laptop, etc. On the high-end tier, you're going to sound just like I'm sounding right now. You're going to be on a Rodecaster Duo, Rodecaster Pro 2, or Rodecaster Video if you have video elements to your podcast. And you're going to pair it with a microphone like this, the Shure SM7B. All these links are in the description, but it would be on the very high end of cost. Other equipment you're going to have would include the correct cables. So if the microphone that you purchase doesn't come with cables, you're going to have to get the correct XLR or USB cable. You're also going to need a desk or boom arm stand for holding your microphone. You'll need either in-ear monitors, headphones, or just some basic earbuds to hear your audio back, and possibly a little adapter to change the end of your headphones and make it compatible with the USB interface you end up choosing. And you're going to need an SD card if you end up going with the Rode series of audio interfaces or the Zoom Handy recorders. I purposely put equipment way down the rung, so in case a podcaster gets discouraged long before they get to buying equipment, because what I've seen happen over the years is people will buy a whole bunch of expensive equipment and then they'll never use it. So if you already have the momentum of setting up the show and getting everything going, then if you purchase the equipment, you're actually purchasing it to go to the next step, which is recording your promo or trailer. This is where you finally would put your equipment to use, and you would get out what I call either an episode 0 or just a quick promo. And what I like to do in that is I want to state all the questions someone would have. When does the show air? Where can someone find the show? And of course, why should they listen? The editing section has been spun out to its own standalone course because 1, some podcasters will outsource this portion of podcasting. 2, some podcasters will use automated services like Auphonic to produce their podcast, link in the description. And 3, there are a handful of podcasters who will claim, air quotes, authenticity and not do anything to their recordings prior to release. While I'm not going to deter anyone from using any of the 3 methods that I mentioned there, I am making a standalone audio editing course for free that will help those of you who are going to go it alone and want to put a little polish on your podcast. The link will be in the description, as well as the video will pop up at the end of this training. I also throw some recording tips at the beginning of that video, and it will help mitigate problems that they'll have in editing otherwise. But let's move on. All right, so this is a show I started to put together but never finished. But if we went to the podcast settings in Captivate, here I could drag in the podcast artwork, and you'll see the cover art there. Then you'd fill in your show name, and you'd have your description of your show to fill in. So this was a podcast gear review. So I would go into there. I covered sometimes tech news, so I would choose that as the second one. I couldn't think of a third one. And then the podcast, how is it released? Is it episodic with seasons, or serial? So mine's episodic. Does it include any explicit language? No. They want you to choose 300 maximum. And then you can sort how they come up, older episodes first. So if you did have a serial program, you would do it that way. But I would do newest first because I want you to see whatever I've just created. Choose your time zone, time, website link, email address and stuff. And that's about it. They do let you choose to a certain extent. So I tried to keep mine pretty straightforward. So Podcast Gear Reviews is the name of the show. And then I would click Update Show Settings. Show has successfully been updated. Creating your feed is pretty simple like that through Captivate.fm. And now you want to submit your podcast feed. So what you're going to need when you need to do that is you're going to need your RSS feed. So when I click this button up here, it has copied that link. A lot of the directories that you're going to put your show in make you jump through some hoops. So I am not going to cover all of that in this video. There are thousands of videos, like 1 and 2 minute long videos showing you how to submit your podcast to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. It's a dime a dozen, a penny three. I'd be wasting your time and my time. You submit your show to all of the different podcast directories that you want to be in. So you want to for sure be in Apple Podcasts because they're going to distribute it to a lot of other smaller podcast apps. And Podcasting 2.0, you're going to want to be there. Spotify, some people like to be there. Some people do not because of Spotify's practices, how they treat music artists and podcasters. So you can make that decision for yourself. And once you've submitted your show and they've approved it at these various directories, this is where you'd come back to. Apple will spit you out a link. You would put that in here and you would save changes. Spotify will spit you out a link. You would put that in the next one because they'll just keep going down, down, down like that. And you would just choose what you're, where you're putting it at and put it in. And so you can see they have the message, just like I told you. Once you submit to Apple, there's a lot of these other ones that are going to propagate. So then when you have a show page to send people to, it'll have these different little app links in it. And like I was stating earlier, Captivate FM is one of the sites that does allow you to have a custom domain name. You can use your own domain name. So you can click enable, put that domain name in there, and then you're training your audience to go to that domain name, even though it's still their little show page that they give you. It's just handy to do it that way, in my opinion. So if you want to build a website down the road, you've already got people going to the right spot. If new directories come up, you can just add your podcast feed by coming up to that RSS feed and clipping that. And then you paste that into wherever they say to paste it into, to the new directory that you want to submit your show to. Now it's time to promote your podcast. On your webpage or your media hosting page, you're going to want to make sure you have both your subscription buttons, just the appropriate subscription buttons that you want to use, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. And you're also going to want to make sure you have social sharing buttons so someone could quickly share it with their friends on X, on Facebook, etc. I get the most pushback on this next idea, but I really think that you should spend money on your podcast promotion. Building awareness on social media and in podcast apps can be huge and quite beneficial to growing your show rapidly. And if you're just dead set on not spending money, then your show may grow slower, but you're going to have to join conversations around your subject matter. Position yourself as an expert or as somebody that is fun to engage with. If there's other podcasters in there, then maybe podcast promotional swaps where they play your promo, you play their promo, or you can interview people in your niche and try building your audience in that manner. However, with interviews, don't be surprised if they don't move the needle at all, or if they move the needle for just one episode. You want to get people coming to your podcast for you, not for guests. Now it's time to make it rain. Let's talk about making a few bucks. What people get a little confused on with podcasting is they think it's a quick fix for earning money, and it usually is not. Almost never is. Less than 1% of the population that's podcasting is making livable money. Now, you can do this in numerous ways, but don't expect any of these to add up to a lot until you've built a very good-sized audience. First, I'd mention community donations. That's what we've done for the past 19 years, and they can add up to be quite a bit of money. You can also sell merchandise. We had this perfected at one point on my podcast network when we were covering a lot of TV shows at once. We would latch on to memes on the show that doesn't infringe on IP. We'd make shirts and people would buy them. And we'd make a little bit of money off of every shirt sold. And it was just a nice little added bonus of money coming in every month. If you're in a good niche, you can chase sponsorships, companies that want to get in front of your audience. And in podcasting, the CPM, cost per milli or cost per thousand, is much greater than most YouTube categories. So you build an audience of several thousand people, you get somebody that wants to get in front of that, you could make 25, 50, 60 or more, depending on the category in which you're in. So if it's a hard to reach category, that money is going to go up, up, up. If it's a really general category, the money's going to be quite low. And lastly, you can do programmatic ads. This is like the YouTube interruption ads. That is the lowest hanging fruit there is. And it can be quite annoying, just like it is on YouTube. Because the ads are low quality and they're interrupting the content, they can work against you. And I wouldn't suggest implementing programmatic ads unless you have a gigantic audience and are going to make real money. I know people who have enabled them and they only make 10, 20 bucks a month. And to me, that's just not enough to annoy my audience. So I've never enabled them. And lastly, everyone hates to talk about it, but legalities. Cover yourself legally. No one can own half a podcast for real without it being some court case, and nobody should own half a microphone or half an audio interface or half a microphone stand. Just bite the bullet and you get everything, and then you invite somebody into that. You get it in writing that you own the show, etc., etc. You want to make sure these things are defined and clear up front. Don't get into trouble with a co-host who's your best friend today might be your biggest enemy tomorrow. So be careful on co-hosts. Be careful on guests. Make them sign a release when they come on your show, because the last thing you want is a guest saying, hey, can you take the show down? I didn't mean to say X, Y, or Z. And then now you're going to waste time messing with something that's already been out there when you can just go, nope, you signed your release, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles, my friend. Unless you want to comply and do whatever they're asking you for. But you could be chasing your tail, dealing with interview guests and them not liking something they said or wanting you to go back and edit something they said, etc. And I'll reiterate now, no copyrighted music, no stuff you don't own. Just don't do it. There you have it, a topical but pretty thorough overview of podcasting from start to finish. A quick Google search will bring up a litany of results on any of the stuff I've just touched on. Or you can drop a comment and suggest any of these topics that you need me to go a little bit deeper into, and I can put it on my website or I can upload it to YouTube. But definitely check out the equipment and services that I've linked to in the description. Those are my affiliate links. So if you do use it at no extra cost to you, I get a little something back. But as always, thank you.